In the last video, we talked about how we don't want this to be able to happen, right? Well, what if we want to do, if we do want to set the value of our energy instance variable of our object to a new value? Well, how can we do that? That's what a setter is for. So we're coming over to our character class, and in between our constructors and our toString are where the rest of our methods are going to go. So I'm going to put my setters right here. Okay. And how does a setter work? We say public, and let's do name first. String get name. I'm sorry, it's a setter. So we're going to say set name. And it needs to take in an argument. So we're going to say string new name. And we're going to say name is equal to new name. Actually, the setter does not have a return value. So we're going to say public void, like so. So now what is this method going to do? Well, this here tells us what the method, what data type the method is going to return. So since we put void here, that means that when we call this method, it's not going to return any data. It's going to return nothing, void. Right? Alternatively, we have this toString. It returns type string data. Right? It returns a string. Okay. So setters don't return any data, so we set it to void. It does take in a value. It takes in the new name. Right? Now, what does the setter do? Well, the setter sets the name equal to the new name. So now I could use the setter to set the name to a new value. So instead of saying hero.name is equal to some new name, like so, right? I can't do this because name has private access. However, I can run setName like this. Okay. And down here, I'm just going to go ahead and run the toString. So what is my program doing now? It's creating an object whose name is Daniel. Then I'm setting the name Daniel to new name. And then I'm printing everything out using the toString. So let's go ahead and run this. And you can see here, my name is new name. Right? Now, how is this better than what we had before? Well, this is better because if I go ahead and set symbols in as the name, right, my setter here can check. It can error check. Say only allow the name to be set to new name if some condition is true, right? Only if the name meets my expectations, right? The criteria that I have set up, meaning maybe only letters, right? Maybe I could say if all alpha of new name, right? So, and if it's not, and then I could just not reset it, right? I can just make an error message on the else. I could say print line error. Okay. So what do setters allow you to do? They allow you to protect your data by giving you the opportunity to check before you set. Okay. Now our programs in for this class, we're not going to go ahead and double check, right? We're just going to use the setter to set the name to the parameter. However, that's the idea behind having setters. They allow you to protect your data. All right. So since we have private access to name and we have our setters, right? Well, how can we get the name? Okay, how can we get the name? We can get the name by having getters. So I'm going to say here new name. And so how do we get the name? Well, let's go ahead and make a getter. I'm going to say public, and this is going to return a string. I'm going to call it get name. It's going to take in no arguments, and all it's going to do is return the name, right? And why do we need getters? It's because we have a setter. And why do we have a setter? So that we can protect our data and make our instance variables private, right? So when we're over here in the getter, what is it going to do? It's going to return the instance variable whose access is private. Okay. So if I'm over here in the driver and I ever want to get the name, I can do it. I could say object.getName, two parentheses. Okay, so what's going to happen here? I'm creating an object whose name is Daniel. I'm changing his name to new name, and now I am getting the name and printing out new name. So let me go ahead and run this, and you could see that it prints out just new name. All right. So we have getters and setters, and so now that we've learned about getters and setters and why we need to set our instance variable access to private, every single one of your classes for every instance variable should have a getter and a setter for every instance variable.